This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Hi, I'm Nick Gatien, and this is the Powerful Connections podcast. For over 40 years, I've been involved in planning and building high-voltage projects. My company, DGG5 Advising, is the opportunity maker you need for your energy and construction projects. My guests and I are going to share our experiences and how we have brought projects to successful completion. My guest today is Nick Gatien. Nick, you are the last guest on Powerful Connections. Nick is the president of PowerNorth Utility Contractors, Inc. Nick's business is located in Whitefish, just on the west side of Sudbury. Nick is third-generation Gatien in the line contracting business and is a very good journey person line worker. A lot of experience with all aspects of the high-voltage industry, including distribution, substations, and transmission lines in the construction, utility generation, and mining sectors. Does a lot of remote location and off-road work, which is why he has a very good off-road trucked vehicle fleet. Nick, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, my name is Nick Gatien. I'm the president of PowerNorth, father of four, and all of my hobbies are now old and crusty because I have a new hobby, and that's running my new business.
Today, we're going to discuss what's coming. How bright the future is. You've had some similar experiences to your father and myself. We worked for our father, your grandfather, as young as we could, helping out. We aspired to work our way up in the organization. At 34 years old, your dad bought his father's business. I was 27 at the time. You were brought up at the table of the president of a line contractor like we were. It gets entrenched in you without knowing. You worked for your father, but your experience was slightly different in that you started your own business. So tell me the excitement of starting your own business, knowing your background.
Well, I think the most exciting part for me was the new challenge. I never finished a business degree or economics degree or anything that would really prepare me to run a day-to-day business. I think my history and learning from some of the best guys in the industry has prepared me enough, but not enough in my mind. Always thinking that learning more is better, especially when you're in a zone that you're not familiar with. I grew up at PowerTel. Most kids grew up on a farm or a quiet cul-de-sac. I grew up at a line contractor, just like you said. And the one thing that I guess dawned on me was that I had most of the nuts and bolts to get up and moving. It was the starting a business and learning insurance and bonding and, cash flow were all things that I wasn't used to. I was used to putting on my work boots every day and going out and doing what I knew best. And that was line work, and not because I wanted to go down that path. It was because it just happened so naturally. And in fact, my father pushed me in every other direction but here, and I ended up here anyways, probably for some good reasons. The enjoyment of having something new in your life is something that everybody always chases after, that new, fresh feeling of doing something different. That's kind of what's driven me to do this. I could have went back to line work. I could have, become a salesman. I'm a pretty good salesman some days, but I think for me was, having all of the items in my back pocket, but just not knowing how to play all my cards at once. And that's where guys like you and my father really pushed me to do something new and neat. And it just ended up right back where we were before. That's all I really wanted, was to get back to having fun and doing the things that I learned along the way that drew me to this field, I guess. I never really thought I'd be a business owner of my own company. I thought, maybe one day I would take over the family business, but it became something that wasn't obtainable to me, you know, sliding the keys across the desk. It just wasn't going to happen. And the sooner I realized that, the sooner I became unhappy, and which led me down this path towards happiness.
Pretty cool to hear. Where do you see the industry heading with all of the demand for power?
I think the industry will always be somewhat busy. It's who has the right cards to get the cake. When you look at the market as a whole over the last 5 or 10 years, there's been probably, let's say, under 10 large line construction companies that do large scale off-road transmission lines. And that's where Clary, yourself, and my father kind of focused, was mainly in the off-road new power requirement world. And that world has gotten a little different over especially the last 5 years, as players have kind of changed and companies have come and gone. But, I think the market was ready for, a smaller to mid-sized contractor, but for us was the level of understanding of having to execute large scale projects. And not only were they large scale, but they were becoming more than just typical wood poles and wire. We started getting into very large foundations. We started to get into underground stuff, a lot more constraints on where we could go with these new lines. And that's kind of where we found the market for us, is that there might not be a $1 billion job that we're going to undertake, but there might be aspects of that $1 billion job that only the Billionaires Club has ever done. And that's why we can be a little bit more effective in our world, because we can do the new scale, the new style of construction, but without the $1 billion overhead. I think that's kind of where the market is going to go, where you'll have the big guys that will always predominantly do the big jobs, but not necessarily making a big effect on the market. Watching some of these large scale projects and seeing some of the players that do them, it's in my mind not necessarily better to be the biggest. It's better to be better than the biggest. And for me, having a group of guys that can be trusted and a turnkey solution that isn't, first of all, a lie, and second of all, going to break the bank. You want somebody that you can trust in this world. And in general contracting, you want a group that you can trust, and that somebody's going to bring that job across the finish line without the big surprises and the big changes and the more money. You of all people always taught me that, you may not be the cheapest contractor around, but you bring the best solution to the table and you don't bring surprises. And for me, having a customer that just says, get over here and get to work, says a lot about what you did before you got there. And, one of my biggest growth items is that, I had a wonderful family behind me that blazed the path for 40 or 50 years that, made the industry what it is. But not only that, it made our name what it is. And when you start with nothing and you come out after a couple of years with more than you would ever expect, it shows that, your family did what was right from the start. Unfortunately, you only get that opportunity once to get let in the door because of your last name. And if you don't perform, you don't get asked to come back. And unfortunately, my family was very good at teaching me the right way to do things. And that's how we execute stuff. We're fair, we're honest. And I think that's where the demand is going to be for those fair, honest contractors that will always bring your project across the finish line. And if, everything goes to hell in a handbasket, they're there to pick you up and pick everybody up and keep running.
And I think, the big items you've hit on in that what people are looking for is performance, but they're looking for integrity and transparency and so forth. And the relationship development brings that to the table. And when you have somebody call you and say, get over here and give us a hand, the relationship's already established. And that's fabulous to hear. You are in many sectors. You're busy in all the sectors of mining, generation, transmission, substations, and distribution. And your business is growing. And what do you see will be some of the challenges as you pursue these opportunities?
For me, it's trying to keep a consistent work group and work platform that, you're not picking up, more bodies or more equipment to get a smaller job done. You're just moving things around so that your main workforce can just pick it off and get it done when you have time. Consistently growing so that you don't have those peaks and valleys. That's the biggest challenge for us is, that constant growth and how that affects your day-to-day business. Just adding bodies and adding equipment doesn't make you a better line contractor or have higher capacity. You have to have all of the checks and balances that made you get to that point duplicated instead of just diluting. You don't want to dilute the pool, and you don't want to dilute what you started the whole thing for. So I think our biggest challenge is consistently growing and, finding the right people to join our team that have the same goal in mind. And that's, everybody trusts each other and everybody's there to make a good product and to have a high level of fun.
I think the creation of that atmosphere brings the people in. And I think you and Brendan have definitely done that. And the creation of a great culture and a great place to work and comfortable to work and good communication. So when you are looking at what's on the horizon, and do you see there's more maintenance and rehab and replacement work going on, or do you see there's going to be more new construction, or kind of a mix?
I think there's always going to be a good mix, whether there's more of one than the other. I think we'll see very quickly that the maintenance and rehab is really going to start to overthrow the new construction, just because of the status of the infrastructure that's out there, and not only Ontario but across the country and across the world. As you start to see the lifespan of modern day electricity start to fall apart, that's where you'll start to see a lot more maintenance and rehab work. And I think that's where we've fairly focused our offering is around those items. As a new company, getting into construction right away is difficult because it does take time to develop those types of projects. We have been lucky by doing lots of new construction over the last year or two, but I think there's a lot more of a world and an appetite in our books for maintenance and rehab work. Whereas you see a lot of the rehab work is generally new construction, and a lot of the times you're seeing that those types of projects are not just replacing the asset that is there, but double or tripling what was once there, just for the new demand that's out there. As we get into electrification of everything, I think we'll see the demand really start to rise for those, feeders and substations that are out there. But, there is going to become capacity conversations where there is going to have to be, brand new construction and new feeders and new lines and new interconnects that are going to be part of it. But I think that the way the developed world is these days, with all the new mining generation items going on, I think they're going to try to utilize what is already in place and what is already existing infrastructure instead of trying to start from scratch. And we've seen it before where jobs will put the Band-Aid on until they can get to that part of construction where they're building a great big transmission line. But we're starting to see customers becoming a little bit smarter where they're trying to utilize the local distribution systems or generators or liquid natural gas to start their projects, so they're not delaying their power requirements, because they do take some time to get through the application processes. So, is there one or more of the other? I think as far as we can see, there will always be maintenance and rehab work. Construction will die off and pick up as the market and economy does, whereas refurb and maintenance is always going to be there. You could have the worst recession in the world. It doesn't mean that the utilities and the generators and the mining customers can be neglectful of their systems that are in place now. So
that's a good point. What do you feel will be your biggest issues to get ready for the work that's on the horizon?
I think it'll be growing our business so that we can continue to monitor and assist our existing customers and continue to have enough bodies to go after those new opportunities. We've done a good job of setting our roots in a very short time, and we have a very good customer base already. But I find that a lot of the new construction items are new customers, and you don't want to get out of control doing a big job and lose touch on what brought you here in the first place. And that's, your bread and butter and your regular customers that, don't necessarily want a price or hear about what you're going to do for them. They already want you there doing it. So I think for us, just continue to keep our focus on what got us here and what will continue to keep us around for the future. And then, wherever new construction or these new opportunities fit in, they fit in. And I think our biggest challenge is to not overstep our boundaries and overstep what we're capable of doing. We always wanted to have a very high level of understanding of every project we've done from inception until today, and never want to get into one of those positions where you don't know what to do, or your back's against the wall, or your client's out of money and now you got to go beat them up. And for me, I never want to be there. And I pity those that operate their business in that type of a scenario, because you'll never get walked back in the front door of a business that, you've taken advantage of or allowed somebody else to take advantage of.
Yeah, those are tough situations. With the customers you're busy with, do you feel with the challenges of finding resources that your customers are looking to do it project by project, or are the customers trying to make sure you're available with long-term agreements?
We have a good group of customers that have started to put in front of us some long-term agreements, and we are really acceptive of that. I think that in my past experience, especially in the north, a lot of utilities haven't had these longer term agreements, or any customers for that matter. But when they start to put them on paper, it really makes you feel like you've done something different than everybody else. But then there's others that don't put them on paper and expect you to be there at the drop of a hat. And it can be very tough, especially when you have a large project or a large job on the go, to stop what you're doing and go and assist the customer for a day or two or three. It becomes a little bit of a juggling act, and you actually start losing production on the focus you were at. So, you have to be very careful with when you jump and where you jump to assist people. We've gone on weather events. We've gone to complete failures, regardless of whether just, old infrastructure or something wasn't installed right the first time. And you gain some momentum with your clients when you go and save the day and and help them out, stop everything and go and help them. But you have to watch that it doesn't affect your other projects and your other business, because if you start playing favorites with one customer or one client, it can turn around and cause you grief as well. So, making sure that your customer's aware of what you're doing, if you are going to help somebody or you do have other agreements that you have to honor, it certainly helps when you're transparent. But we've seen project to project agreements. A lot of the projects that we have completed have led into longer term arrangements. But to say one or the other is predominant, any customer is open to either or. It all depends on what they're trying to do at that given time.
Today's world, customers are trying to secure resources with these agreements so that, if they need you, you are available. And those are tough things to manage and the challenges of those. So in all of this, we get into the next part of this, and that's creating the future and the apprenticeship training part. What do you feel your thoughts are on apprenticeship training today and the investment you have to make in people?
Well, I think it's a very important part of the industry that, a lot of contractors have not focused on as well as they should have. I was always taught that, it was the future of the company and the future of the work. And, I was a very young apprentice, probably one of the last traditional apprentices that went through the regular program. You're starting to see a lot of college programs coming up now, and there seems to be a lot less of an appetite for even a utility or a contractor to pull a kid off the street and put them to work. And sometimes they make the best apprentices. Seeing that the programs have diversified is neat. It's nice that it's changed with the times, and some of these younger kids enjoy going to school and they need to get that structure from going to school. Whereas some kids, farm kids, especially in the north, already had that discipline and work ethic prior to finishing high school. So, whether or not one is better than the other, it becomes a very important role in what a contractor is doing. Because if you don't start developing your apprentices early on, you'll lose touch with the younger generation. You'll lose touch with the work. You'll lose touch with the work methods. You'll also lose touch with the training techniques and some of the trainers. Having the ability to take on new apprentices each year and utilize some of the training staff that trains them at IHSA or at the college really makes a unique program for us, because we're able to, from start to finish, kind of mold the apprentice into what we feel an apprentice should be doing and should be understanding. And it's different if you go to a utility, and it's different if you go to a contractor. And contractor's motto is to try to, make that bottom line bigger every year, or to at least establish a baseline and keep it consistent. And having an expense like training employees is something that has to happen. And if you don't, it'll hurt your bottom line more than if you didn't train them or pick up any new guys. They'll definitely do the work of some of your more expensive workers. And not only that, it develops your future for that, new journeyman and new foreman that you need. And they're not getting any younger. We've seen a large group of people leave the industry, and we've also seen other utilities and contractors get lots of work, and all of a sudden all your apprentices have disappeared and they're all making big bucks or consistent money with the public utility. And it becomes cumbersome when you need to build your crew. You can't have 100% superstars across the board. You got to have some younger guys in there that you're developing to first keep the cost down and to keep your work program going.
What do you feel is a good use of your time now? I see you're more involved in the Powerline program at Cambrian, and do you feel there's a return on the investment of this new option, this new non-traditional method?
Well, I mean, we've always tried to put as much effort and time into it as possible, and now that, I can kind of control my time a little bit more, and I don't have somebody over my head saying I got to go here, got to go there. I can make time for the future, and that's one of the hard lessons about business. Running your own business is nobody's ever going to be behind you telling you what you need to do. You have to kind of figure it out on your own, and do the things that are important to you and that matter. And I'm a big community guy. I love, the local schools and the kids that are coming through the schools. And if you're not spending the time developing them or making sure that, the program is suiting what you want, then you can't really stand back and complain and say that this isn't working and this isn't working. You always have to find that solution or that mix of what's right and what's wrong. And if you don't, you're kind of naive, because it's like if you drove a car and you weren't very good at it, you can't just, not practice or don't go to driving school. You have to develop your skills, just like, developing your skill to run a business. You can't just ignore it, and you can't think that somebody else is going to come behind you and pick up the pieces. So
Yeah.
one of the biggest things for me is developing the kids so that, we have a good workforce and we have a good pool to draw from. But on top of that, it's being part of it and having your name attached to things like scholarships and bursaries, and kids fighting in school to want to go and work for the best contractor in town, or them all coming back from their co-ops and arguing who won their co-op. And I think since we've started offering co-ops at PowerNorth, we've really changed from what I was even allowed to do or not do when I was an apprentice, and to have a good scope of work and a good, change of atmosphere all the time. I think, we're actually building a better apprentice now that we are that smaller to mid-sized contractor, because there is, a vast majority of work orders and work out there that we're doing. We're not just, going to the 500-kilometer power line and sending the poor kid setting poles for the next 6 months of his life. He's doing everything from A to Z, and getting to be able to touch things that normally kids wouldn't touch. You hear some of the horror stories of some of the kids going to places and they don't even get to go in the air in their first year or two. And it shows to me that others are just not at that level of training and caliber to get these young guys moving.
So talking about apprentices, what do you feel your real value in the graduates from the course, in the additional comprehension skills and college background they're getting to go on top of the practical application of the knowledge?
Well, I think the nicest thing for us is that we're getting into, an industry that is, first of all, multiple barriers of safety and reporting. And I think that says pretty much everything. Having somebody with a college degree as opposed to a high school diploma, is giving them that much more time in a professional, atmosphere to learn how to write reports, communicate with others, and generate documents that you simply wouldn't get out of high school. And when I find you're in the practical setting in a college program, the caliber of reports and documents that are prepared are much more honed than, just somebody coming out of high school. In some of these, just regular curriculum courses, where we see a higher level of articulation and also a higher level of engagement in the apprentices. And for us in this industry, those are two things that, you have to have, in the 99th percentile. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
So do you see that problem solving and instruction taking and feedback opportunities are just more improved or better?
I think they're non-existent through some of the candidates that we've had prior to college curriculums. There's a lot more structure to get them to the point where they're going to work on a line crew. Whereas, you could have come out of high school and gone to a contractor and gone to work the next day outside of high school. Whereas, having 2 years or more of college education is excelled the fact that they can do these, reports, safety meetings, inspections, which is a very large part of customer satisfaction and employer responsibilities. Having kids or even young adults that have been through the program, where the programs kind of hone them into what exactly to, expect on a day-to-day basis, is, helping draw out the guys that are going to succeed and the ones that won't. So I always tell the kids, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. You want to be in the program, not just because, you see the fancy trucks and the big paychecks and all the toys. You're there because you want to be there, and because you think that this career is going to be rewarding and challenging and fun, and you're not going to go home and be upset every day. So you get a little bit more of a mature person, a mature worker, when they're coming out of college.
We used to call that skin in the game.
Yeah.
So the other thing that got developed over time was the line crew ground support, which is a course for Indigenous participants in the make ready training for power lines, but it can be applied to general construction. But tell me a little bit about your experience and history with some of the line crew ground support grads.
Well, I was still in the field when you and others were developing it, and didn't really understand until I went to my first graduation what it was really about. And when you see some of the kids that have gone through this program and some of the adults that have gone through this program and see where they're now able to go, it's a little bit different than the apprenticeship program, in which that, most of the people that get into this program have been screened and have been selected to be participants in it to create a better life for themselves. And when you hear some of the stories or see some of the people that are graduating, it's neat to be able to touch it, see it, feel it, and understand that, 15 weeks prior to this, they may have never had may never have had a shot to get a job in the first place. And for them to be brought into this world and brought into this industry with, some of the best trainers and the best curriculum around, that was made and designed to help contractors and utilities, engage some of these people, is really heartwarming. In fact, I hired a kid out of line crew ground support. I stood up at his graduation, told everybody in his class how he came to see me and stood up in front of me like a real person, a real man, and, told me about his experiences in the program and his experiences outside of the program and why he thought it was a really cool place to be. And the end of the graduation, I gave a little speech about him and hired him on the spot. And him and his mother were crying, and I thought for sure that it had really sent a good message, especially when I started crying, because you really felt the heart of these people. Some of them, like I said, have never gotten a chance to leave their communities or continue their education because whether they couldn't afford it or didn't have the ambition to do it. And finally, you're seeing people that see the light at the end of the tunnel and we're starting to see a program and an industry that is rewarding, and it can be really cool and really, really neat to see. And, it's even better when you start to see them develop beyond that. And one of our employees, Michael, is just about ready to do his fourth year school and become a journeyman lineman. And he's still got a lot of hard lessons to learn, and still is hard on himself sometimes. But seeing where Michael came from and Michael's family and what his family's up to is pretty neat, because his brother's a full-time cop. He's in an industry and has had a job for a long period of time and has been able to develop his apprenticeship. Seen that from a young guy who's twice the size of me, but to see that in a young guy's eyes and his heart every day when he comes to work, that he was only from 45 minutes away from here in a community that may or may not have ever given him that opportunity. It was really neat to have a family that was part of creating that for everybody else, and not just for one community, but for the people.
Well, I think it's having a positive effect, and it's definitely creating capacity building for resources that are definitely in demand these days. To change topics a little bit, what are the challenges you see and the positive signs coming out with vehicles and equipment, knowing that they're hard to find, they're long delivery, but what do you see also in some of the manufacturing changes that are happening?
Well, one of my biggest hobbies now that I'm a business owner, and even before I was a business owner, was always playing with my toys and equipment. And I always thought of myself as a bit of a fleet guru or a fleet, manager, even though I never had the title. Starting a business in the middle of COVID, or the starting of COVID, and seeing the effects of the supply chain on, the commercial vehicles and the road vehicles. I never thought there would be a day where I'd have a wallet that says I need to go and buy 5 trucks and I can't find them anywhere. It was really weird to be in that type of the world, I guess, for the last couple of years, where you had to flip over every rock to find a crew cab long box pickup truck. And when you're going downtown Toronto to find one of the only ones in Toronto, you're kind of scratching your head as to why it's there. And it just makes it a little bit more challenging to have everything in front of you to be successful. Nobody, and even a business owner or a client, doesn't want anybody showing up in a piece of junk and making a mess of their work site or their city, or making a mess of a project you're supposed to do because your equipment is breaking down or you just can't find it. So we've been able to get what we can get, and we've had to rent a little bit more than what we would normally want to, but it's allowed us to free up some of our capital to focus on growth and tools, and expanding our business development and our back office. I think as we continue to grow, that's going to be our largest focus, is making sure that we're buying the right pieces of equipment for the right time and for the right projects at the right price, because nobody wants a yard full of equipment that's rotting or sitting there. Just doesn't bode well, and it's hard to come to work every day when you got to stare at assets that cost you money and they're not moving. So, one of the things that we've done a little bit of a focus on with some of our major and main clients is getting them access to some of the gear when they've had issues. And that's bringing some of our relationships that we've had past and present to the table, and either getting them gear or helping them find those right pieces of equipment to do their job, or finding something that may not fit the bill but can still work, and getting them to understand that it'll still work is part of the battle too. But I think as a new line contractor, you want to be able to go out to every dealer and spend millions of dollars, but you just can't. So you got to buy the stuff that matters and make sure that it's good investments and good purchases. And Make sure that you're not buying when you can't keep it busy. The last thing you want to be doing is sitting something in the yard with high interest rates and no work, and it'll catch up on you fast. And that's one of the biggest items in construction is, managing your assets when you're not busy so that it doesn't bankrupt you.
Talk to us a little bit about some of your experiences with the Indigenous customers and subcontractors that you've got.
It's been one of my learning curves as well. I had some great mentors, but I didn't pay attention enough when it was time to pay attention to those types of things. And I find I'm a little behind the eight ball now, trying to catch up to what others have put in place, but not necessarily the relationships that they have. One of our claims to fame is, having one of the only Indigenous groups around that we service on a very regular basis. That was a walk in the door, but you have to perform every day to continue to make it better for them. And for our clients that are Indigenous, they can be firm. They can be very vocal, and they can be very protective of what they're doing or about to do. And being able to get on their level and chat with them like a normal human being, and getting them to understand that you're not somebody from Western Canada that's just here for the paycheck, that you're here forever and ever and ever. And, here's a list of people that I pick up the phone for every day because I help them, not because I want a paycheck. It's because I like helping them. Mm-hmm. So that's, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that you can't be a dress coat business guy around some of these people. You just got to be yourself and show them what you're all about. And they end up doing the exact same thing with you. Subcontractors can be tough, but it's all about how you manage your subcontractor and their day-to-day activities that makes you successful or not. It doesn't matter if they're Indigenous or if they have a new company or a thriving company. Understanding what the work scope is and being able to manage that subcontractor so that they can do what you want and that you're not chasing around issues is something that's on yourself and on your people, not on them. Some people can say it's difficult, it's hard, it is a challenge, but it's something that the new world has got to get used to because they're here to play. And if you don't get out of the way, they're going to knock you over and take your wheels, because they will not take no for an answer in a lot of circumstances. And when you can bring the yes man mentality to the table, they like the people that fight for them and fight with them, not the people that fight against them.
Yeah. You've been very active in items with your website and social media and apparel items and other things in marketing. Where do you see your best impact is these days in today's marketplace and the industry response you're getting?
Well, I have to say that my website is not the most updated piece of material we have. It's actually probably one of the oldest pieces of marketing material we have, and it does need a good refresh. But one of the things we did was engage some pretty good people to put it together and help us write some of the content that's in there. And I don't necessarily think that the content is old. Everybody likes to see new pictures and see what you're doing and all the different things that you can do. And that's one thing that haven't been good at developing on our website, but in other places we have. Mm-hmm. And whether those places are marketable to our clients, I don't think they are. I don't think they ever will be. But it provides a word of mouth and a platform that people can see, hey, these guys don't just have a bucket truck and a digger and are going to set private poles. They have, some of the most sophisticated pieces of equipment, working on some of the most sophisticated pieces of plant that, there's, like I said, only a handful of contractors that have had that experience. And to be able to naively market is something that I've been very proud of, because we haven't done a very good job of marketing, and we probably will never really do an exceptional job of marketing, but we've been able to get our footprint in the marketplace better than anybody that started a business in the last 10 or 15 years in this industry. I think the good marketing is good business. And if you have good business and you do good work, it markets itself. Word of mouth spreads quite quickly in this industry. And when you are part of the gang that made the industry what it once was, and you get to say, oh, look, we're doing it again. It gets a lot of people's attention. Not to, float my own boat or toot my own horn, but I don't think it's my horn that I'm tooting or blowing, because it was the guys in front of me that, made the trail that I'm following. And I might do some things a little different, but I mean, the lessons I learned, I took for gospel, and I watched them work forever and ever. And then I was able to, have some really good, bad experiences that, opened my eyes and made things a little bit different in my mind for when it was my time. And I still have lessons to learn and mistakes to make, but I think the footprint and the engine in this machine is still got the fundamentals to drive and drive with the right mentality.
Well, that'll give you some pretty big impact in the industry. And I'm going to give me some ideas of where you see your business developing to.
I'd like to develop a business that is self-sufficient and has a good group of people that, want to come to work every day. You always told me the story, my father never did, on how we got bored with line contracting and how he found that new something to keep him busy or to, light his fire again. And for me, I think I'm on that journey. I want to get this place running and operable so that everybody that I've put in place or Brendan has put in place has the tools and power to make it into something great again. And that's what this whole journey is, the epiphany that I had 3 years ago that I wasn't going to, be a delivery driver or do weeping tile on basements or even go back to being a lineman. Nobody was ever going to make that fun for us. And that's what I want to do, is make fun for everybody else, which makes fun for myself. And hopefully it gets boring that I have to find something else to do or develop my business in a different avenue. We want to be a mid-size or large contractor. But like I said, we don't need to be $1 billion biggest contractor around. But, if there was $1 billion job that we could do and, we knew we could do it, we would consider it if we made it there.
Yeah.
But it's all about reciprocation. So we didn't have a big bank account to start the business, and we have to grow by completing projects positively on time and, on budget.
So what do you feel your closing remarks are for you on this final episode of Powerful Connections?
Well, I thought about, some of the rants I'd probably catch myself on, and thank you for keeping me organized. And I find that it's a unique industry, and everybody that wants to be here is very passionate about being here in this space. And I never knew that I would ever be here or, have the experiences that I have. But it's understanding that, there's a group of people behind you that are looking for a paycheck, and their family is too, and gives you the motivation. But I think, if I could end on one thing, I'd say that you could have all the money in the world, It doesn't mean you can run a line contracting business.
Well, Nick, thank you for joining me for the final episode of Powerful Connections. I'm excited to see where you aspire to in the next 30 years. The future is very bright, and you are a shining star we will watch. This is the end of Powerful Connections. Hopefully, we brought you some great ideas for all the listeners to consider. And if you need assistance from DGG5 Advising or any of our guests, please contact me, and you can find my contact information on LinkedIn and our website. Nick, thank you very much for being my guest today. You were the last of 11 guests I've had. This is the completion of the very first season of Powerful Connections. Stay curious, find ways to solve things, communicate with those you need to complete your projects. We will see if we need to do this anymore. I'm hoping this has stirred up a lot of interest and questions and requests for DGG5 Advising, the Opportunity Maker. Get in touch with me on my website at dgg5advising.com or find me on LinkedIn at Dean G. Gatien. Thanks for listening to this episode of Powerful Connections.